We're gonna start on page 180. 181.
Is it dark?
No, it's normal. This is normal. This is normal
Why
here
can't I see?
because it's bright out there.
No, there's no light like right here.
Well, maybe we need to move the table back a foot.
Yeah, I might actually move. Yeah, no offense, Ron. I'm
That's
gonna
fine.
move, but I can actually see my notes. Okay, we're on 180. It's okay, I'm gonna go right next to Harvey. Right?
Right.
Harvey Dents.
Move the table back. Yeah, I mean, we have to move the table back 5 feet.
Huh? This is very bright. Okay, we're on.
Usually on.
So. Good morning. We are in Parshat Vayislach, which is known for many things, but the sort of the two key stories are the wrestling with Jacob wrestles with the angel and the rape of Dinah. And we're going to sort of scroll back. I want to just look at the end of last week's Torah portion by Vayetze to give us the framework, and we're going to focus on the wrestling story. We're going to focus on the framework and try to understand the wrestling story in greater context. You know, one of these big questions is who Jacob wrestles with. We're not going to deal with that one today. That's what we do most years, but we're going to do something a little different. We're going to start on page 180 and we're going to read Genesis 31:3. That's fine. 180, 31, 3. Okay. So we're back. At the moment, Jacob is still living with Lavan, his father-in-law, Jacob and his two wives, his two concubines, his 11 children at the time, or maybe 12 if we count Dinah. His 12, 11 sons, one daughter, right? And God speaks to Jacob. And what does God say? Verse 3. Someone to read?
Return to the land of your fathers where you were born, and I will be with you. Jacob had Rachel and Leah.
Period. Oh, all we needed was one sentence, right? God says to Jacob, I'll give you a little Hebrew for your Hebrew readers. Shuv, return, el eretz avotecha, to the land of your ancestors, your parents, umuladetcha, and to the land in which you were born, and I will be with you. Does it sound like anything?
Yes,
What does it sound
it
like?
sounds like lechacha.
Lech lecha, right? If you go back to Genesis 12, the call to Abraham to go to Eretz Canaan, the land of Canaan, it's almost the exact same words. We're not going to look at it now, but trust me. What is God's promise? So God says, go back to the land where you came from. And what is God's promise?
I will be with you.
I will be with you. Does it say I will? Does it say I will protect you? I will save you. I will bless you? Unclear, right? It just says I will be with you. Right? So I want to make a note. Okay, that's the first verse we're looking at. And now, just these are some precursors. We're going to go 186. So that motivates Jacob to leave Lavan. And if you know the story, Lavan doesn't want to let him go because Lavan is his most successful shepherd. And Jacob, who is working underneath his father-in-law as a shepherd, keeps growing more and more sheep. Jacob has figured out some breeding system. If you don't remember the story where Jacob is like this incredible sheep breeder, and like they keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. And Jacob decides to just leave because Lavan won't let him go. You're stuck in the family business and you can't get out. So Jacob leaves with his two wives, two concubines, 12 children, and his sheep. I don't know how he differentiates his sheep from his father-in-law's sheep and the rest of the family, but he leaves. Lavan chases after him, if you remember.
Because of the Salim, the
Yeah, and there's this whole thing, Rachel steals the idol, and all
Idol.
these things. Yeah, we're not gonna get, it's very interesting.
It is, yeah.
I can give you I can give you 2 hours on that.
Yeah.
But I just wanna, they actually meet and they make an agreement. Lavan and Jacob make an agreement in the end, right? Like, we are formally parting ways. This isn't Jacob fleeing. You know, one of the themes of Jacob's life is he often flees. He is known for running away. I think you can think about it through different times in his life. This is another example where he runs away, right? Finally, they actually make a formal pact. And what I want to specifically look at some of the agreements that Jacob and Lavan make. So we're on 186, Genesis 31, starting verse 49. Want to read? Yeah, please.
And it was called Mitzpah, because he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of sight of each other.
Keep going. By the way, this is Lavan speaking to Jacob. Keep going.
If you ill-treat my daughters or take other wives besides my
I
daughters,
mean, 4, you would think 4 is enough, but yeah, go ahead.
though no one else be about, remember God himself will be witness between you and me.
Keep going.
And Laban said to Jacob, here is this mound, and here the pillar which I have set up between you and me. This mound shall be witness, and this pillar shall be witness, that I am not to cross to you past this mound, and that you are not to cross to me past this mound, and this pillar with hostile intent. Keep
One more.
May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, their ancestral deities, judge between us. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac.
Period. Okay, so Lavan is actually, it's interesting. Lavan is the one who's sort of making the promise by their gods, right? Each of them are swearing by the gods of their ancestors. Lavan's father is Nahor, and Isaac is swearing by his father Abraham, or the God of his father Abraham, right? I want to look at one specific line here. They say, what's the promise they make? We are not going to cross into each other's lands ever again. Right? And then there's, depending on how you read the last word in this, la ra'ah, right? I don't know if that qualifies it or not, right? With ill intent, or what do they say, hostile intent here, right? But basically, what my reading on this is Jacob and Lavan agree, we are never going to meet again, right? I'm never gonna cross into your territory, and you're never gonna cross into my territory.
But wasn't it all Laban's territory? Jacob was working?
Jacob was working for him, but not in his land. But if you remember, like one of these, another sort of major theme is crossing a river. And when you cross a river, you're crossing into another land, right?
But the whole land was for him. Jacob was a stranger. He came from somewhere else.
Right, but if you remember the first verse that we said before is, leave this place and go to the place where you came from, right? So he's leaving, right? Lavan is saying, go, don't come back. Go to the place you came from, right? Never come to my land again. Right? I just want to make a note, like this is making a note, because this is sort of going to build up the drama. So now we're in chapter 32. These are the last lines of last week's parsha. Someone want to read just 1 through 3? Yeah.
Early in the morning,
Early in the morning.
Laban kissed his sons and daughters and bade them goodbye. Then Laban left on his journey
Homeward.
homeward. Jacob went on his way, and angels of God encountered him. When he saw them, Jacob said, this is God's camp. So he named that place Mahanaim.
Machanaim. Yeah,
How do you
okay,
say it?
good. Yeah, you were fine. Machanaim. Yeah. Yeah. Hebrews, Israeli Hebrew speakers will do better than me. All right, again, like this is just precursor setting us up, but this is the end of last week's portion. Okay, they wake up in the morning. This is the goodbye, Jewish goodbye, right? Grandpa Lavan kisses his daughters and his sons. Now, the only son that is leaving here is his son-in-law Jacob, who they don't actually have such a great relationship. So probably it means that he kissed his grandsons, right? So it's just interesting to note, but the most important line to me here is, as soon as this moment happens, who does Jacob encounter? Yeah, an angel, angels, right? If you look in the Hebrew, Malachi Elohim, angels of God. Okay, interesting, right? When's the last time Jacob saw an angel? It was when he was running out of Canaan into this land when crossing the river, right? And he saw the angels going up and down, right? This is the midrashic understanding that there are territorial angels. We actually have angels assigned to us for every country, and angels don't cross country borders, which seems a little far-fetched, but like, yes, I have a Cuyahoga County angel. When I cross into Summit County, that angel stays in Cuyahoga County, and I have a Summit angel that joins me and protects me on that journey. That's the traditional understanding. Like, why did angels suddenly appear? Yeah, but these are angels. I don't know, you would think God's, divine angels have the ability to cross county lines, right? There's other things here, but it's just interesting to say that Jacob recognizes them as angels, because we're gonna look at the wrestling story and that whole question of who Jacob wrestles with, right? It's unclear whether angel, man, his own thoughts about his brother, his childhood issues that he's dealing with, his parental issues, there are all these questions of who he's wrestling. Esau himself, right, appears in the middle, right? We don't know. But here, Jacob sees angels, right? Like, this is not a question. It's a given.
Why not assume that the angels just will stay away from Laban's land? Period. There are no angels in Laban's territory.
That too. Okay, maybe. Okay, yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah. I don't know. I hope when I travel that an angel follows me wherever I go, and not just in Eretz Israel. I mean, don't we want to believe at least that there are angels here in America? I mean, that you only get an angel in Israel? I don't know. Yeah, right?
I want to go back to the kid.
Yeah, I do want to say, like, I have 3 commentaries I want to go through at some point, so hopefully we'll have time.
I wanted to go back to Laban's kissing.
Laban's kiss, yes.
Yeah, I see that the verb for kiss is the same here as the kiss that Esau gives Laban.
Yeah, every kiss begins with K, yeah.
The question is there any commentary about this kissing versus that kissing?
It's a good question, right? We're gonna look at it. We're actually gonna look at some other kisses later if we get into it. Yeah. If we actually get to some of the commentaries, right? Well, Ron is asking, right? He's already knowing that when we're gonna read the story of the wrestling and the post of after the wrestling, when actually the brothers Jacob and Esau meet after 20 years, they kiss. But there, it is unclear what the kiss is. And just to show you, if you want to take a look, Ron, it's already jumping in, 20, what? 20, if you look at 204.
It's the goofy word at the top.
The goofy word at the top, right? If you look at 204, you're already past the wrestling. So like, yeah, you're already like jumping fast forward, right? If you see that third word in the Hebrew, there are these big diamonds on top of it. Right, and that's actually in the Torah, it is written that way. There are only a couple times in the Torah where these diamond things mark off a word, right? So the question is, this is right, Jacob and Esau meet and they kiss. So the question is this like kiss with air quotes? Like, do those dots above mean like, we're not sure they really kissed? Right, because they had a lot of animosity amongst themselves, right? So what Ron is asking is the kiss that happened with Lavan and his grandkids. It's the same word, but is it the same implication? Whereas Jacob and Esau kiss, but it's a question, do they really kiss? Were they sort of sparring? You can think of like brothers wrestling and kissing and hugging at the same time and, elbowing them in the gut and, think about that, right? So was it a wholehearted, loving embrace between brothers, or was it something that had a little bit more tinge to it as opposed to a grandfather kissing his kids? Okay. I don't have an answer for you, but it is the same word. Yeah, it's the same word. But if we can now get a little, now we're actually gonna jump back to the beginning of our parsha. We don't know, right? We don't, I mean, the rabbis say it brings attention to that words, right? So it's either there's different understandings of it, and we're jumping there because we didn't really look at it yet. So, right, number one is it emphasizes the word in a way that very few words are emphasized in the Torah. So does it show that reconciliation is possible? Maybe. Does it show that, right, this is a really important moment and it just emphasizes the moment? Or does it show that the rabbis weren't sure that that's the exact word that should have been used here? Are the rabbis saying, we're actually not sure if this is the real word? Did they actually kiss? We don't know. And if you move some of the letter, if you move a couple of the letters around, it can go from kiss to attack. Right? And so the other question is does this show that the text is unclear that that's the actual word that was originally in the Torah, and that it's that Jacob attacked Esau when he saw him?
Grammatically, a letter is missing. A letter nun.
Yeah, although if you, in Hebrew grammar, there's something called nun nofelet, that oftentimes in Hebrew verbs, where a nun is the first letter, it is not used. I'll give you an example. In the priestly blessing, Yisa Adonai Panav Elecha, right? That is the Hebrew word to lift up, Yisa, right? God lifts up God's countenance upon you. The Hebrew word is nasa. And there's no nun there. So it is not uncommon for a Hebrew verb that has a nun as the first letter that it falls out and you only get the rest of it. So that's just one example, but that is a common Hebrew grammatical form. Yeah.
Going along with my symmetry here,
Yes.
isn't this the last time Esau and Jacob see each other? After they
I
part
believe
here?
they bury their father together.
Okay, other than that, so I just wanted to
Yeah,
point
but you're
out that.
jumping. I want to get to the text.
No, but the
You're already going past the three commentaries that I here in my 2 hours before Shabbos, when I found out that I'm teaching a class that I was just doing shot here. With some beautiful commentary I'd like to bring. Yeah.
What I wanted, again, with the symmetry,
Yes,
I wanted to say was that if they never saw each other again, then it's the same as Laban with his grandsons. They never see each other again either. That's the symmetry I want to point out. You can go on with
yeah,
what
but
you
they
want.
do. They bury their father together. I'm pretty sure they bury their father together.
I think you might be right on that.
Pretty sure. Pretty sure. But there's actually some, if we get there, it's a little interesting how they actually part ways there. Because they seem like friends, but they're not, and it's unclear. Yeah, Mike?
Is this notation in all Torahs?
Yes.
Goes
Yeah.
back to the Dead Sea Scrolls?
I don't know if it goes back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls are not 100% the same as our Torah, mostly the same. And the Dead Sea Scrolls are not, it's not complete. They only have sections. So I don't know if this goes back to the oldest, but this is standard in old, pretty old Torahs. We can pull out we have a 600-year-old Torah. We can look. I'm 99% sure it's in the 600-year-old Torah that we have. Yeah.
Where is that from, the 600?
That is from Prague. The Altanoi Shul, where the Maharal, Rabbi Judah Loeb who was a mystic who created the golem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from that
He's
synagogue.
the golems in this Torah.
And the Torah dates to around his time or before his time. So, yeah, so it's it is by, there was a school of mystical sofrim, mystical scribes, Kabbalistic scribes, and the text is from that school. It's very unique. I've had a world-renowned sofer come and look at it, and he says this is one of his 10 most interesting Torah scrolls he's ever seen. Yeah, okay. All right, now let's get to our Parsha Vayishlach. Oh, Stephen Creed, yes.
Yeah, so Rabbi, look, the original script of the letters, the Hebrew letters today is not the script of the ancient Torahs, number one. So until we see the proof that those triangles appear in the ancient text in any document of that time, it's all contentious that it wasn't added by the rabbis at a later time when the script was changed to what we recognize today in today's Torahs.
That is a good point, right? So if you've ever seen, and I think they use this in the Ten Commandments movie, there is an earlier script of Hebrew called Proto-Sinaitic Hebrew, which is much more basic letter, it's squiggles and straight lines and there are things that look like animal, like an aleph is actually an animal head. And there's all different, Mayim, looks like water because of Mayim, and they're all, those shifted and over time became our Hebrew letters, right? So the original version of the Torah is that, and there also is no spaces. You have to figure out where one word ends and one word begins. It's literally just all the letters together. No vowels, no breaks, no nothing. Right? That's the original, that's the oldest version of the Hebrew writing of the Torah that we know of. Yeah.
It used to be that the Aleppo Codex that was in Syria was the oldest and thought to be the most accurate. And then in 47, 48, when there were riots and the Jews were leaving Syria, the codex disappeared. And it's in the book by Mati Friedman called the Aleppo Codex. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And that the codex reappeared years later, somehow kind of magically, somebody dropped it off secretly at the Jewish Museum, but a third of it was missing. And people like a Syrian refugee who was living in Brooklyn, he had one page of it folded up and in his wallet as an amulet. And he sent it back so it could be back together. And now the oldest and thought to be the most accurate codex is the Leningrad Codex. But we don't have a lot of access to that now because it's in Leningrad, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they can ask the former Syrian president for that. Thank you, right, and that's a whole really interesting thing, it's very important, right, because as we said, right, the question is what is the actual, there's different understanding, what is the accuracy, like what is historically the most accurate, the most real, original versions? But then we also have, but the last 2,000 years or the last thousands of years, this has been the understood text. And this has been our traditional text, and all of our commentaries and understandings are based on this text. Even it was potentially an error, right? There is value to it and we study it and we get interpretations from it, but it's also important to hold up, but what was it actually? What was the original story, right? Okay, great, thank you. I do want to look at the beginning of the parts and then get to a couple of commentaries. This is great, so, okay, so now we're on 198, the opening of Parshat Vayishlach. Okay. Someone want to read? On page 198, someone want to read? Yeah, please.
Okay. Jacob sent messengers ahead to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, and instructed them as follows.
I'm going to pause you for a second. What's the Hebrew word for messengers here? Melachim, which could be angels, right? If you remember two verses before, but it was in last Parsha, right? It said angels of God, and that was Malchei Elohim. So that was Melachim, who were specifically described as Melachim, Melachei Elohim. They were messengers of God as opposed to just messengers. So these we actually think are human beings that Jacob sends out to his brother. Okay, keep going.
And instructed them as follows. Thus shall you say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I stayed with Laban and remained until now. I've acquired cattle, asses, sheep, and male and female slaves. And I send this message to my lord in the hope of gaining your favor. The messengers returned to Jacob saying, we came to your brother Esau. He himself is coming to meet you, and there are 400 men with him. Jacob was greatly frightened. In his anxiety, he divided the people with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two camps, thinking, if Esau comes to the one camp and attacks it, the other camp might yet escape.
Okay, I want to pause you here for a second. So, right, so Jacob sends messengers, right? And there's a lot of gravitas here, right? Right, to my lord Esau, from your servant Jacob, right? I send this message from my lord to my lord in the hope of gaining your favor, right? Can you like describe how is Jacob's presentation?
It's the reverse. He was the one who was the Lord. I mean, he was given the blessing of firstborn, and now he's sort of
Right.
conceding.
Jacob is lowering himself, right? Jacob is lowering himself in the approach to Esau, right? Then you'll see these phrases you get repeated over, I think 7 or 8 times, right? Jacob describes himself as servant and describes Esau as master. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, right? He gets the news that Esau is meeting him directly. Now, does it say Esau is meeting you directly with weapons to fight you? Esau is meeting you directly to attack you and to kill your family, to capture you? No. So what is Jacob doing when he hears that Esau is meeting him?
Well, he's frightened by his girlfriend.
He is frightened by the number of people he has. But by the way, Jacob's got a lot of people too, right? Because you can see, right, you know, if you follow along, right, Jacob repeatedly sends group after group to Esau. So it doesn't give the number that Jacob had, but Jacob had quite a few people with him too.
Right. It's,
Yeah, go ahead, Ivan.
it's a combination. He's trying to act in a deferential way to his brother, in a
Mhm.
humble way, because
Yeah.
he's frightened and he wants to, try and deflect Esau's anger, if in fact there is any. Yet at the same time, he's describing his circumstances, with all of these cattle and camel and so forth, which means he's a person of substance and wealth. So
Yeah.
it's a combination.
Yeah, I just want to question, thank you, Ivan, is Esau's intent. Esau doesn't put any intent in that, right? You know, it's just Esau's coming to see you with people. Right? Right? Jacob reads into the situation. Jacob puts in his 20 years of guilt, anxiety, all these feelings that Jacob has had for 20 years, right? Right? And that's how Jacob is approaching it. And Jacob is scared to death, right? Scared to death that his family's gonna get smushed, right? And he's gonna lose everything that he has. Yeah.
A little note here, Jacob is aware that retreat would violate his pact with Laban.
That's also why I didn't say that, but that's why we read that opening thing, right? Jacob couldn't turn back because they made that agreement, right? Right? They made that agreement with God as witness, right? That he could not turn back. So Jacob had to move forward, right? He was sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Okay, if you'll keep reading. Now Jacob is gonna take a moment and talk to God. Go ahead. We're on 199 verse 10.
199, okay.
Then Jacob said.
Oh, here. Then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your native land and I will deal bountifully with you.
Let me just pause you for it. Was that actually what God said? Is he misquoting God, rephrasing God? What did God say? We just read it 10 minutes
I
ago.
will be with you.
I will be with you. Now, does I will be with you mean I will deal bountifully with you? I will.
He embellished.
He embellished, right? If you look in the Hebrew, the etiva, right? All will be good with you. Right? So he's embellishing, he's interpreting, right? And then he goes forward. Keep going.
I am unworthy of all the kindness that you have so steadfastly shown your servant With my staff alone, I crossed this Jordan and now have become two camps. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, else I fear he may come and strike me down, mothers and children alike. Yet you have said, I will deal bountifully with you and make your offspring as the sands of the sea, which are too numerous to count.
Right, so now he's even extrapolating, I will be with you,
Abraham, yeah.
right? And he's doing this, and remember, he did have the vision, the dream at the ladder. That's early on, 20 years before, right, where God appeared to him and said, God said, I will be with you, right? You will have offspring and whatever, but then if you remember, Jacob makes a deal with him. He says like, I'll only sort of be with you if you bless, if you give me good things. Here, there's no, he's not putting anything on that, right? He's just accept, I'm unworthy. That's different than the Jacob from 20 years before. He's grown up. He's grown up, but he is still extrapolating this, I will be with you. Understanding, he understands I will be with you means I'm gonna take care of you and you're gonna have future. Your children are gonna live.
Wasn't he, I mean, if you think back to Abraham
Yeah,
and the promise, wasn't he extrapolating it from, what's happened in the past? If God is gonna bless him, then that's what he means. He's gonna make him many people and, riches and wonderful, so he.
agree. I'm just saying that the last moment, the last blessing that he got, or the last promise that he got from God, the last vision didn't say that. That's all I'm just saying, right? I'm just noting that Jacob is extrapolating. He's taking more potentially from God's message. Yeah.
Isn't he also in effect arguing or bargaining with God? You're gonna be on my side. Yeah, you got to do this too.
I think he's done that in other places, and that's what I was saying when he was younger, he was bargaining with God. I'm not, you could potentially read that in, that's not traditionally how the rabbis understand this. This is actually, they say this is a more mature Jacob who's not bargaining, who's sort of, I'm undeserving, right? Like that's not necessarily a bargaining chip when you say I'm undeserving.
Right.
Right.
Basically, more so he's praying to God. It's a prayer that he's initiating with God for the first time. Before God has initiated the contact with him.
This is that whole maturity thing, yeah.
Right, and he's also acknowledging, Abraham and Isaac here as his forefathers, which is really a leap for Jacob. It's showing that he, as you said, he's really matured and acknowledging his position, or at least his desire, to become the next link in the chain, the patriarch.
This is where he grows up, right? And one of the three commentaries is actually going to be, they all sort of go this way. This is the final, I don't know if it's not reclamation, but right, every blessing that Jacob had gotten before, there's always been some level of deceit. There's been some level of it's not authentic, right? Some level of it was undeserved, right? Some level of there was some funny business that happened, right? This is the restitution of that. This is Jacob finally is going to get a blessing where it's all him, where it comes from his own positive actions. Right, and we're gonna get there. So this leads into that, Ivan. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was saying, what you said earlier, having an English here, to me, he doesn't have a whole lot of faith in God. Because God said, I'll be with you. Okay, part of it, if God's gonna be with him, if he's fearing for his life, the least that God being with you means was that at least I'll protect you. Forget about the power for everything else. He's fearing for his life, means God isn't going to be with him. He does say his children and everything else. So I understand maybe God was, I'll be with you, not necessarily with everybody else. If you're going to be the continuation, so he's constantly questioning me, he's questioning God, you're saying I'll do this and this and this, but in the meantime, he's still afraid. He's not putting a lot of trust in God.
It's a fair reading. Yeah. Not opposed to that reading. All right, I want to keep going.
Okay, 14, right?
Yeah, we're now on the top of 200.
After spending the night there, he selected from what was at hand these presents for his brother Esau: 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milch
Milch camels, whatever that is, yeah.
with their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses and 10 he-asses. These he put in the charge of his servants, drove by drove, and he told his servants, go on ahead and keep a distance between droves.
Right, bring these to Esau, or I'm gonna let you get there, but like do it in stages, right?
Yeah.
You know, you get your Amazon deliveries like throughout the day, right? Like, yeah, just keep them coming, right? The other, yeah, a nonstop. All right, keep going.
Okay. He instructed the one in front as follows: when my brother Esau meets you and asks you, whose man are you? Where are you going? And whose animals are these ahead of you? You shall answer, your servant Jacob's. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and Jacob himself is right behind us. He gave similar instructions to the second one and the third, and all the others who followed the droves, namely, thus and so shall you say to Esau when you reach
I'm gonna
him.
pause you here for a second. Number one, right, what, if you look at the Hebrew, what is the word for the presents or gifts? The Hebrew word, you can look at the top, it's the second word on the second line, mincha. Mincha. If you hear mincha, what do you hear?
Prayers.
Right, so mincha is our afternoon prayer. What's the other meaning of mincha? Sacrifice. That, right, our afternoon mincha service is based on a sacrifice which was brought to the temple from as described in the Torah later on. So mincha is the name of a specific sacrifice, which then became the name of a prayer service.
Can
It's
it be,
interesting.
can it
Yeah.
be a gift? A gift?
Can be gift offering, probably more, right, because it was the mincha offering. Yeah, so like, yes, it means gift or present, but for us, when we hear the word mincha, right, or for a reader, they're hearing either sacrifice or prayer. I don't know if they heard it in this original version, but it's just interesting use of the word. There are names for gifts also that are different, matana and other things too. You know, there are other words. Okay, right, there's this interesting sort of, Jacob poses these three questions that you're probably gonna ask, right? What man is this? You know, whose man do you work for? Where are you going? And whose animals are these? So it's really interesting, right? So these are all these things to say, it's Jacob, surprise, right? Okay, so, but now keep going. This last line is interesting. You shall add.
And you
Yes.
shall add, and your servant Jacob himself is right behind us.
Keep it going.
For he reasoned, if I propitiate him with presents in advance and then face him, perhaps he will show me favor.
Keep
And
going.
so the gift went on ahead while he remained in camp that night.
Okay, right, so what is the reason that Jacob has concocted this elaborate delivery plan? Yeah, right, he's right, lowering guard, right? He's making it so that Jacob can safely approach, right? So that Jacob will be given favor. Okay, if you actually look at the Hebrew, it's a little more complicated. That English actually was propitiated and whatever that means, right? If you look in the Hebrew, it's a little interesting, and now I'm gonna weave in some of the commentaries. So if number one, look at verse 21. It's like the 8th word, but it's in the end of the second line, and if you're a Hebrew reader, achapra, hanav. Achapra is from the Hebrew word kippur, kapar, kippur, which means atonement, cleansing, Yom Kippur, right? So I don't know, there potentially could be another way to translate this then, right? I propitiate him with presents in advance and face him, perhaps he will, right, get my favor. Let
Maybe
me see if
butter
I
up.
can find the better translation here. I'm sorry?
Maybe propitiate could be butter up.
Butter up,
Yeah.
yeah, or
Forgiveness.
yeah. It really say it here, but maybe Jacob is asking
For forgiveness.
I mean, it would make sense, right? I stole your birthright.
He
You think
knows
of-
he's guilty. Jacob knows he's guilty.
See, I am making an atonement. I am asking for forgiveness, right? One of the ways that we do that is by giving what we have to someone else, right? Repayment, restitution, reparations, right? So it's interesting. That's not in the translation here, but that's actually in the Hebrew, achaper, right? I am asking for forgiveness. And then, if you look, the word mincha, gift, offering, sacrifice, prayer changes. If you look in the Hebrew, I gotta find it. Here it is. It's not where I want it to be, though.
It's,
Hold on.
it's two lines up from 23 at the bottom. Is that what you're looking for?
2 lines up from 23 to the bottom. And gonna make me see this.
He's 22.
What's the word?
A mincha.
Yeah. Yeah, so number one. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. Well, hold that. We're gonna get that later. Okay. Okay. Keep going. You want to keep reading?
Sure. Am I at 23?
We are at 23, yeah.
Okay. The same night he arose and taking his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, he crossed the ford of the Jabbok.
It's the name of the river, Yavo. Yeah,
Yavok,
in
yeah.
Hebrew, yeah.
After taking them across the stream, he sent across all his possessions. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn.
If you look in the Hebrew, it does say ish, it doesn't say angel, it doesn't say God, it says a man. Okay,
When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he wrenched Jacob's hip at its socket, so that the socket of his hip was strained as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking."
I want to just pause for a second. Number one, like when we think about the story of the wrestling, I always think they're like verses and verses describing this incredible wrestling match. It's only one line.
Right.
They wrestled all night.
There was more about the ladder.
Much more about it. Everything else had much more. How many camel and sheep and this stuff had more? Yeah. So they wrestled, right? When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, this is the man, quote unquote. He wrenches Jacob's hip at its socket and he says, "Let me go, for dawn is breaking." Okay, keep going.
And he answered, "I will not let you go unless you bless me."
Right, this is Jacob saying, right? The unnamed man says, "Let me go," because the sun is coming up. By the way, Alod HaShachar, which is the Hebrew, here is also a key prayer term. That's the first time you can pray in the morning. By the way, this is also maybe Jacob finally saw who he was wrestling with, because they didn't have flashlights, they didn't have electricity. I don't know if he had a campfire burning, right? He may not have known, literally, he could not have seen who he was wrestling with. And by the remember, his father maybe had macular degeneration, maybe he did too. So maybe he had vision problems, who knows, right? Okay, and he says, right, "I will not let you go unless you bless me."
Just
Right.
like at the time from the first 20 years ago.
Yeah, right. So I want to say more than that, actually. I want to say, what is the one thing that Jacob craved most in his life?
Blessings.
Blessing. Blessing. That's all he ever wanted. All he ever wanted was blessing. And as I said before, right? Blessing that didn't come from some,
Deceit.
some left-handed way. I'm left-handed, so I can say that, right? Some not right way, right? Like, that's all he wants, right? This is a deserving blessing. This is him wrestling. It's only him, nothing else, right? He is holding his own, right? He is meeting head on this challenge and struggle. And what does he want from it? He doesn't want money. He doesn't want fame. He doesn't want power. He doesn't want prestige. He doesn't even ask for help
Or
when he's
safety.
meeting his brother potentially to get killed and to destroy his whole family line. Right? He's not asking. He could have asked for that. He could have said, you're really strong. Maybe I need you to help me because my brother's coming to attack me. Right? This sounds like a warrior that he was wrestling with. And he
Or
could have
maybe a
asked,
man sent by Esau. I think.
could have been, right? We don't, that's another one of these there's there's like 50 interpretations
Right,
of
at
who this
least.
is, right? But he asks for a bracha, a blessing. Okay, keep going.
All right. What is your name? Said the other, what is your name? He replied, Jacob. Said he, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with beings divine and human and have prevailed. Jacob asked, pray tell me your name. But he said, you must not ask my name. And he took leave of him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, meaning I have seen a divine being face to face, and yet my life has been preserved. The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping on his hip. That is why the children of Israel to this day do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the socket of the hip, since Jacob's hip socket was wrenched at the thigh muscle.
Right, so, just like one note about this, right? That's why we don't have, Jews don't eat filet mignon, right? It's a
Could he
specific
like
kind of
wrench
beef.
another joint or something?
Yeah, right, so, this is a custom that's still observed today, right? This is a thing that highlights, right? We are reminded for eternity of this story based on our food choices, right? So that's the power of this story, the importance of this story is that this determines what we can eat and what we can't eat still today. That's really all I want to say about, yeah.
I was once looking this up to try to understand it better.
Yeah.
And it said that in Israel, if the sciatic nerve is teased off that area,
Yeah.
then it is kosher to eat. But
Yeah.
it is so
Very
labor
precise.
intensive
Yeah,
to do it that it's almost never.
it doesn't, it's cost prohibitive.
Right.
Yeah, Sephardim have a system. Yeah, Sephardic butchers have a better system to do it, but it's labor intensive. It's very, very expensive. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you know that? This story that this is. But that it's mentioned in the Bible.
Too expensive.
That was supposed to be written by God. I mean, I understand it was added in 500.
Well,
Added by the rabbi.
I think it's what I said. I think this highlights the importance of the story. This highlights, right, there are certain things, we get many reasons we do circumcision, but one of them is because Abraham did it.
Right.
Right, like this, we don't eat this because Jacob, right? These are core things that come up throughout our lives that remind us of these moments that our ancestors had with God. I mean, there's so much more. I want to so a couple things. Number one, Jacob's greatest strength in this wrestling match is what? It doesn't say.
His
Yeah.
persistence.
Yeah, right. Like, so it's very, I just want to make a note, and this is from Marilyn Robinson's book, Reading Genesis, right? His greatest strength is endurance.
Yeah.
And that even through injury, he can struggle forward and prevail. That's number one. To be blessed is Jacob's oldest longing. And he receives a new name. And anytime you get a new name, that suggests a new path is being sort of drawn up for you, that you have a new fate and that a new beginning. And this is what she writes, right? At this moment, his life changes and he suddenly becomes a hero, framed by triumphant struggles. And that's
Rabbi?
a defining state. Yes, and then Bijan did want to say something. Yeah.
Yeah. When Isaac asked him what his name was, at the time of the blessing, he said Esau. He lied.
Yeah,
Now,
yes.
when
The whole
the
full
East-
circle thing.
The
Yes.
Ish asks him, he tells the truth, he says Jacob. He
Yes.
accepts him, he accepts himself at that point.
Yeah.
That he doesn't
Yes.
have to be Esau, he's Jacob, and that's when he gets the new name, Yisrael, which is a name for the Jewish people.
Yes, exactly, 100%, right? There are a lot more examples where I sort of said, like, this is the right way to get a blessing, right? He is trying to undo, to restore, to heal all those mistrusts and deceptions that he's done throughout his life, including, right, not being honest with who he was to his father. Yeah, Elliot.
There are some examples in the Torah where restitution of a relationship was based not on buttering somebody up with gifts, but on words interpreted as being heartfelt and sincere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yes. Are you asking?
Yeah, there's some other.
Is there another
examples,
example? I mean, I want to say yes. I got to think about what they are.
For some people might interpret you're buttering me up. I want something that comes from the heart, not just a physical thing, the value.
I have to think about it, but I mean, there are definitely examples. I gotta think about it though. Okay, so we're gonna move forward. We're gonna get to 33. I'll just keep reading. Keep reading. The story's too good. Keep reading. Looking up.
All right, looking up, Jacob saw Esau coming, accompanied by 400 men. He divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maids, putting the maids and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. He himself went on ahead and bowed low to the ground 7 times until he was near his brother.
Right, this is like defensive, he wanted to separate his family, all these things, right? Protect himself, maybe, there's a whole questions about why these orders, also, choosing the most important for last, and Rachel, and supplanting the one that he truly loved, and all these things, yeah, Mike?
When you take the casket from the hearse to the grave,
Mm-hmm,
there's a procession and they stop.
yeah, 7 times.
7 times?
Yeah, 7 times,
I
yeah,
didn't
7 is a very special number, right? So there's all these sort of inner meetings and things.
Does that 7 times come from here?
Could
Or
be.
7 days of the week?
Yeah, 7 is a magic, 7 is a whole, 7 represents completion and wholeness, right? If I'm gonna do as much as I can, 7 is the number. So anything I do 7 times is like I'm fully in on it, yeah. Yeah, all right, keep going.
Okay.
Esau ran.
Esau ran to greet him. He embraced him and falling on his neck, he kissed him and they wept.
Right, by the way, here, the kiss, maybe, it doesn't, actually, the Hebrew isn't kiss, it's he embraced him, is the actual Hebrew. Okay,
What's
and
the
they
word in
wept.
Hebrew?
What?
What is the word in Hebrew?
Chabat,
Chabat.
to embrace,
Yeah.
yeah. Now,
Okay.
interestingly here, it's unclear, there's another, like, you're not sure how to read it when it says he fell on his neck. This is where, if you've ever heard, there's a midrash that Jacob was a vampire, or Esau was the vampire. He fell on his neck, meaning he actually bit his neck, that Esau bit Jacob's neck. That, it's not it, you can see, if you look in the Hebrew, see how that word is written in small letters? Al tzivaro, his neck. There's another textual question there, yeah. I don't want to focus on that. Okay, I want to look on the positive on
All
this.
right, or stiff-necked people too.
Yeah, but.
George Floyd, you think?
So that actually, if you want to get, that's where the midrash goes. Esau tried to bite his neck, but because Jacob is a stiff-necked people, he cracked his teeth. That's a midrash. It really is. Yeah, so I don't know.
They cry.
And they, yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful,
It
yeah.
is.
All right, keep going.
Let's see, looking about, he saw the women and the children. Who, he asked, are these with you? He answered, the children with whom God has favored your servant. Then the maids with their children came forward and bowed low. Next,
Let's skip to 8. Yeah, they keep bowing before.
okay. And he asked, "What do you mean by all this company which I have met?" He answered, "To gain my Lord's favor." Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours." But Jacob said, "No, I pray you, if you would do me this favor, accept from me this, this gift. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please accept my present, which has been brought to you, for God has favored me and I have plenty." And when he urged him, he
Right,
accepted.
so there's this back and forth, reminiscent of many things, including if you remember Abraham buying the plot of land, right, for the burial, right? There's back and forth, and finally Esau accepts it. Now this is what I was on the wrong verse. This is what I want to say. If you look at 11, please accept my present which has been brought to you, for God has favored me and I have plenty.
It's not.
Look at the Hebrew word for present, which is
Blessing.
what? Birkati, my bracha. Right, so please accept my bracha, my blessing, right? As my present. Jacob is giving back the blessing that he had stolen back to Esau. This is the restitution that's happening. It's not mincha, right? That mincha had been the word that had been repeated over and over again for offering and gift and whatever else we want to say, but he was offering his family to him, as everything he had. He was gonna make himself subservient, including his children, his wives, his cattle, his peoples, his servants, everything. So I don't know what actually Esau accepted, but I am assuming it's those 200 camels and asses and all those other things, right? And then there's one last line. So now let's read the last line. 12.
12. And Esau said, "Let us start on our journey, and I will proceed at your pace."
Period. I mean, what an incredible ending. Let's just stop at this line. Esau says, "Let's journey together, and I'll go at the pace that you're going." Beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? Like, we don't look at that line a lot. That's like a throwaway line in the story. To me, it's a really moving line, right?
It's the reconciliation of the two brothers, and it's the prerequisite for Jacob to become the patriarch, to become a Jew. You have to love your brother. He has to prove that he's not Cain or Abel. And that they can coexist. Of course, they really don't coexist, but he does put out his best effort to reconcile his brother, his father's son.
Yeah.
His
You'll see it,
father's
doesn't it?
son.
Yeah, beautiful, right? If we're not gonna read it, but in the end, they don't stay together, but Esau proposes it and you can read that on your own afterwards. So a couple questions, then I want to get to a couple commentaries because it's already 10 o'clock. Yeah.
10 o'clock.
I find that the last few lines with Jacob kind of pleading with Esau, that's like guilt and desperation. And it's interesting in the parsha, we don't see what Esau is coming like with. What are his feelings about to see his brother?
Right, 100%, right. That the Torah is written from one perspective, or this part of the Torah is written from one perspective, right?
Let's ask a question
Yeah.
as a summary.
Yes.
How do these two personalities, Jacob and Esau, strike you, or what should we learn from it? Jacob, of course, is our forefather, the Jewish people.
Yep.
Is it true that they say Esau becomes later on in history the forefathers of like the Romans, the Europeans? Okay.
I don't know if it's true, but the rabbis do call Rome Edom, which is Esau's land. Yeah, so, and his grandson is Amalek, and right, go down the list. So yeah, Esau, right, the future of Esau's relationship with the Jewish people is not positive. Yeah.
Or Ishmael either.
How
Yeah.
do they strike us as two individuals? One is what? Kind of adept in trickery. The other one is pretty simple and nuts.
Might. Focused on power and might.
Yeah, so maybe capable intellectually or something.
Yes,
Is-
that is so
is
true.
that too far-fetched? Okay?
Strife,
Jacob knew something about the science that today
the coincidence.
we call it the science of
Genetics.
genetics.
Yeah,
He knew nothing about that.
yeah.
Jacob knew really to do permutations and combinations and so on and so forth. I don't know.
I don't have an answer for you. Anyway, I think, to me, this is Hal's reading, right? Like, I think that's, the Torah, at least on the surface, presents it as a very sort of simple thing. There's a good and a bad, right? Jacob is good, who does bad.
They don't have.
Esau is bad, who occasionally does good.
Aside from that, and
Yeah.
Dina.
You know what?
Talk about these.
It's commentary. Dina, yeah, we're not, it's a very important story. We're just not touching it here today. Yeah, I mean,
He always brings too much.
yeah.
We did slowly,
Mhm.
the whole thing is justified because Esau becomes the bad guy.
You're saying this is the setting up for Esau to become the bad guy?
Esau becomes bad. And
Where's he bad in this? Where's he bad in the story? Okay, but I'm saying, where is he bad in the story? Right. Esau is forgiving. Esau says, let's do it together.
Edom, all his successes are unforgiving.
Yeah. Yeah, well, right, I mean, this is it's complicated, right? Even geopolitics is complicated, you might see.
Okay.
Yes,
Very quickly, you said that Jacob was a changed man here, and I'm looking at these verses where he doesn't follow Esau like he said he was going to. He goes someplace else.
He
He
didn't get-
really wasn't.
Stop.
He really wasn't a changed man.
Stop.
He lied. He went somewhere else.
we stopped. Well, but maybe they spent, it doesn't tell you how long they spent together. Maybe they spent some time together and determined together that they needed to not be together. Like, we don't know, right? The Torah doesn't tell. us.
Abraham.
Like, yeah, right. So I want to stop here. Like, I know I'm sort of making a break in the Torah, but I'm saying I want to end the story that we're looking at, or the section we're looking at right at this moment. So let me give you a couple of things. Okay. Marilyn Robinson, this is like Rabbi Jacobs and my favorite new Bible comment. If you know, she's not Jewish, right? If you've heard, she's a Christian Bible commentator. She wrote a great book called Reading Genesis. So this is a little bit what she says. She says that this story has echoes of Joseph reuniting with his brothers. If you remember that, which is going to come later in a couple of parshas, when he reveals himself to his brothers, everybody kisses and everyone weeps. Another sort of similar, the similar thing, just like when Jacob meets Esau, they embrace, kiss and weep. But there's a question in both incidents whether that reunion and the kissing is authentic. If you remember, when Joseph reveals himself to the brothers, what are the brothers worried about?
Famine?
Retribution.
Well, they come for famine, but they are
Worried.
worried that when he reveals himself, that it's not just, hey, everything's hunky dory,
Right,
we're
right.
back together. It's, you threw me in jail, you sold me, as a slave, right? Like, I'm gonna get back at you.
Right.
They fear that there would be retribution. right? So the question is with this, is this beautiful reunion story, or is there something behind
He
it?
actually-
And can you read that again into these dots on top of things when there's this reunion story, right? Especially because Jacob is known for deception, right? Maybe she even suggests that maybe this whole embracing and whatever is Jacob needed time to stall so his family could slip out the back. Right? Like, oh, I present the family to you. Now we're going to embrace and have this super long hug and my family's going to run away. And you can think about that, right? And these are, she says, they are ambiguous relationships. These moments, now this is a Christian word, but it's a Jewish idea. These moments look and feel like grace. We are suspect and wary. Are we really truly deserving of grace at particular moments in our lives? Right, so grace is, right, that God is going to bless us with grace, right, with
Forgiveness, is it?
Compassion.
with good thing, grace is with good. This is that, where Jacob sort of interprets into that, right? This is God's good, that God is going to watch over and bless me. Right, so that there's a wariness, right? Did I do enough in my life that I am worthy to get grace? So here are a couple of quick examples. Now, so we're going to talk about grace and then talking about something else. Adam and Eve. God tells Adam and Eve, don't eat from the tree. And if you eat from the tree, you're going to die. Adam and Eve eat from the tree, and what happens to them?
They're expelled from Gan Eden.
They don't die.
They don't, but they lose eternal life. So they do
Don't
die.
Right? The punishment was death. Yeah, no, but we think the idea would have been immediate.
Right.
Right? Like, so what Marilyn Robinson is presenting is there are a series of stories in Genesis where God shows restraint. Right? Could God have killed them instantaneously? Yes. The flood, right? God says, I will destroy all life. Does God destroy all life? God could have started again.
Maybe he
Right?
did.
God shows restraints and saves Noah's family and all the seeds and all the animals and all the this, right? God, could you read into this that God showed some level of restraint? I don't know. So she says the Torah presents an appropriate punishment for a transgression, but then in actuality, God partially steps back from its execution. This is expressed as God's justice balanced by God's mercy, called restraint. Cain is not directly put to death. Jacob wrestles all night and emerges. So if we understand that Jacob is wrestling not with a man, but Jacob is wrestling with a divine being, that's sort of what the end of the story implies, right? Now, divine beings are considered to have super strength. Right? The understanding of the story is that like they were not, when they wrenched the hip socket, how did that happen? What did the angel actually do to wrench the hip socket? Do you remember? Or what the traditional understanding is? The angel just touched it. Just touching it did it. Now, if the angel could just touch the hip socket and dislocate it forever for the rest of his life, not sure that's exactly what the Torah says, but that's the understanding. Could that angel have defeated Jacob in an instant?
Sure.
Yeah, so what she is reading into this is that God showed restraint. God restrained God's self by, it's a small meant by showing restraints. Now, if we see God, what is our pundit? If you see God, what's going to happen to you? You die. You die. Could you extrapolate that to potentially seeing an angel who is like God? Right? Doesn't Jacob say, right? I have seen God, right? A couple times, right? And he doesn't die. By the way, same thing happens to Hagar. When Hagar is in the desert with her son dying of thirst, she sees an angel. Does she die? No, right? So what Marilyn Robinson is saying, right? God balances God shows restraint. God shows restraint in many occasions when God could have, this is like the rule. You see God, you die. It's just like, that is how it is, right? Nadav and Avihu, they saw God and they died, whatever, right? So let me just get to her sort of conclusion. God restrained God's self by comforting a desperate mother and servant in the middle of a desert. God challenged the strength of a frightened brother so much so that he could feel like he prevailed and have the strength to overcome the other challenges that he faced in life. This shows us that God is interested in us. There are times when God intentionally shows restraint, holds back to grant us human beings individuality, agency, and freedom to find our own meaning in our own life existence. I thought that was a beautiful commentary.
Relative people that we want. That's what I get.
Yeah, you can read into it. So I have other commentaries too, but I want to sort of call it there. I got Elliot and Ivan. Yeah.
I probably have been wrestling with.
Here comes the bait.
So.
Yeah.
So guilt.
Yeah.
Because you've been wrestling with
The other two rep.
Yes, right. Yeah, Ivan?
If you have brothers and sisters, you know how sometimes it's difficult to coexist, right? I mean, especially when you marry, you start your own family and so on. This is what the Torah is telling us here is you do your best to reconcile with your brothers and sisters. Don't turn your back on the family of origin, right? You can't do that. You have to look to the future, to your new family, to perpetuation, but you can't turn your back on your mother and your father. And that's what Jacob is achieving here in the reconciliation.
And I think that's what Marilyn Robinson teaches us, is the idea of restraint, right? Like, we can have these hard lines, right? That this is the way we're gonna, right? If you do X, this is why, no matter what. But even God, right? God amends that. God pulls back on some of those, what we thought were absolutes in order to give that other person meaning, individuality, or maybe for the betterment of our relationship, right? That you didn't say that, but that's also for the betterment of God's relationship with human beings, right? So I'm just sort of saying what you said, Ivan, in a different way, right? That leads us to a better future together. Thank you for learning with me.
Thank you.